Well, good afternoon, everyone, and it is a great pleasure to welcome you to the session of the Regional Green Economy Forum, REGEF 2026. And on behalf of the World Green Economy Organization, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation for your participation and partnership as we gather here today with a shared purpose to accelerate the transition from ambition to implementation. We meet at a pivotal moment. At COP30, the global community reaffirmed its climate ambition through stronger NDC, enhanced goals, and renewed commitment. But we also recognize a persistent reality. The world is still struggling to turn those commitments into concrete investment, bankable projects, and real outcomes on the ground. The challenge is especially acute for developing countries, especially for small island developing states and for least developed countries, community already experiencing the front lines of climate impact, yet still facing the most barriers accessing capital and technology. This nation cannot afford incremental progress. Their survival depends on rapid, inclusive, and resilient transformation. This is where WGO missions become essential as an intergovernmental platform that brings together more than 90 member states, international organizations, financial institutions, and the private sector. WGEO was created to close the gap between policy ambition and delivery. We are here to move finance into action, to unlock barriers to investment, and to ensure that climate positive economic growth is not only possible but prioritized. The Regional Green Economy Forum, REGEF 2026, is designed to do exactly that. Over the coming session, we'll work together to connect national climate and green economy plans with financing instruments and investment pipelines, support member states to structure bankable, scalable projects aligned with real sector needs, to strengthen enabling environment for private sector investment, and de-risking green opportunities, and finally, to advance regional and South-South cooperation to share solutions that are already working. The forum will also serve as a critical bridge from COP30 to implementation, supporting Article 2.1c of the Paris Agreement on financing and helping accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. We're not here merely to talk about change. We're here to make it real. Let us use this moment to mobilize partnership, to scale up innovation, and to unlock the financial flows that will define a green and resilient economic future for our regions and the world. As we begin to lay the foundation of this forum, I encourage all of you to contribute boldly, collaborate openly, and engage purposefully, because the transition ahead requires all of us working as one. Thank you, and I look forward to a productive session, transformative outcome for REGEF 2026.
Uh, Thank you. Good morning, Excellencies, friends, colleagues. It's an honor for me to deliver the keynote statement on behalf of the World Green Economy Organization. I wanted also to extend our sincere appreciation to all the esteemed panelists. And of course, thank you, Jerome. As you may recall that World Green Economy Forum, we have had the first Regional Green Economy Forum last year in Morocco, in Tangier, which we have learned a great deal of lessons from commitments to capitals. Primarily this year, we're trying to focus on accelerating NDCs, implementing through green investments and finance. For most of the countries within the World Green Economy Organization, especially the Global Alliance on Green Economy, I do not need to repeat, it is not a choice. It is essential that economic partnerships and development priorities are not a question, but they are merely a survival for most of the countries. Among most of the members, they are at the front lines. mostly depending on tourism and fisheries. Um, I have 3 points that I wanted to highlight. One is climate action as economic transformation. For most of the countries, climate action has to be an economic strategy. It is about protecting your natural resources, which sustain both biodiversity and the industries. It is about modernizing your infrastructures and long-term security. It is about reshaping your economy and resilience. Within our GO, we are helping the member countries to invest in the new nature parks that conserves ecosystems while generating sustainable tourism is one of the key examples. Waste management centers to close the loop on pollution and environmental degradation. Obviously, one of the key essentials is renewable energy pilots to diversify our energy mix and reduce the dependence on fossil fuels. And obviously, climate smart agriculture to strengthen food security. These are some of the key areas that we are trying to help to invest and create jobs, protect communities, and build long-term economic resilience. The second point that I perhaps saw was commitments alone. We all have been saying do not build resilience, but the capital does. For most countries, advancing the NDCs, which have laid out a clear pathways for both mitigation and adaptation and climate resilient development. We within the World Green Economy Organization, we are trying to expand the help to implement the phase of a systematic challenge. Accessing climate finance remains the most single greatest barriers for most of the countries within the Global Alliance on Green Economy. We obviously understand that the current system do not adequately provide the most needed. There are complexities. We do recognize that costly access, slow approval, and structures that are ways to disadvantage the member countries. What we are trying to do is we are trying to eliminate most of these barriers and help to access, bring in the private sector, and of course providing the equity from the perspective of organization. Of course, we do recognize and understand the physical realities of the most of the countries. Most of the countries have extremely limited and the debt levels are extremely high. Obviously, these are the direct results of climate shocks, narrow economic base of the most of the countries. And most of the products are imported. And we do understand that this cannot be met with your own resources. That's why we come and help to build a bridge. The second point is improving transparency and planning. I wanted also to emphasize that most of the member countries, you have submitted your BTRs, NDCs, and some are in the planning of the submitting of the NDCs, which are key documents in order for the investors to be attracted. But I also wanted to stress that in these documents, we also guide the countries that it has to be something attractive for investors is to come and invest and get the return on investment. The, the other point is green transition obviously cannot rely solely on public budgets. That is where the comparative advantage of the world green economy coming and providing the equity and bringing the necessary private sector to come and invest in the countries to enhance the implementation of the NDCs. In closing, I also wanted to rest assure that we stand ready to help the countries in enhancing the implementations of your climate commitment. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amjad. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce our panel for today's meeting. The topic of this session today is Regional Green Economy Forum, from commitments to finance, from commitments to capital, accelerating the implementation of nationally determined contributions for investment and finance. So our first speaker today is Mr. Tibyan Ibrahim, the Director of the Climate Change of the Ministry and Tourism and Environment of Maldives. It is a great honor to welcome you in our panel today. Thank you very much, Mr. Tibyan. Our second speaker is Mr. Mubarak Mukala, the Head of Financing Sustainable Development of the West African Development Bank. Mr. Mukala, welcome. We also have Mr. Peter Odengo, who is the chair of the Network of National Designated Authorities for Green Climate Finance in Africa, AFDAN. Welcome, Your Excellency. And we're very happy to have on board Mr. Mohamed Mbu, who is the climate advisor of the General Secretariat of the UCLG Africa. We're very happy to have you on board today, and we are looking forward for a fruitful discussion. Let me start with the first question to Tibyan. As a government representative, Tibyan, we would like to know what policy instruments or incentives have you proven most effective in mobilizing private sector investment in green projects within your region and within your country? It would be very interesting to know, and if you have any opinion beyond that, would be very welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Maybe just to first say, like, from a government perspective, something that's very important for us is to provide a conducive policy environment for enabling both international and private sector finance. Trying to attract a variety of sources. So something that we've done in the Maldives is to pass a Climate Emergency Act. So we have national legislation that provides this legal framework for us to be able to integrate climate resilience into policies, investments, and development plans. In addition to this, because we're a country that's built and dependent on tourism, one aspect that we've done is to have a green tax that's implemented nationally, so all tourists pay a small amount of a green tax, and this is one way that we've tried to ensure that there is a green flow of investments within the country coming through the tourism sector. Private sector still, in mobilizing private sector finance for climate change, climate action still remains to be a challenge, but what we try to do is in the formulation of our strategies and plans, and currently as we are formulating our national adaptation plan, we are taking specific actions to ensure that the private sector is engaged in this process so that there's a ownership and buy-in. We're currently organizing an investor forum for the private sector so that they are involved in the adaptation priorities, and noting that for a small island context, it often is adaptation that is our priority when it comes to our climate finance needs. But we have seen more than, when it comes to adaptation, it is mitigation, obviously, and renewable energy. We've seen the private sector, we've seen international private firms wanting to come in to the renewable energy opportunities in the Maldives. But while that is obviously great, it is something that we are trying to also match in terms of resilience building. So these are sort of, in a very short, the sort of aspects that we're trying to facilitate to ensure that the private sector is interested and engaged in climate action in the Maldives.
Thank you very much, Tibyan. It's very encouraging, and I think you can serve as a role model on how the government can work with the private sector to engage the private sector in proactive action. Thank you very much for your input. And my question number 2 will go to Mr. Mubarak Mukala, representative of Boad. In your bank and maybe in your region, how do you assess and manage the risks associated with green investment, and what, in your opinion, are the innovative financing mechanisms that could be implemented or that you have already implemented in your bank to support climate action?
Thank you very much for inviting the West African Development Bank to this important topic. I know when we talk about risk, first of all, in our region, it's more perceived than what is actual risk on the ground, and we are trying to work around that to make sure that it doesn't penalize us, because our region is already affected by the flow of funding coming, and any circumstance that happen in the world, around the world, affects us. So rating agencies always downgrade our rate for whatever reason around the world. Something happens in Ukraine, they penalize us. Something, there's a earthquake somewhere. Our rating depends on the mood of the world. But we are trying to overcome that by developing some instruments that can support the resource mobilization. Because when you look at it in reality, the less we are able to mobilize resources, the more development issues that we have. So it's like a vicious circle, and then we are trying to provide solutions to solve it. And the West African Development Bank in our region is the number one financial investment development institution. We inject in our region about 1.3 billion every year. And what we have done to overcome and to multiply to have a multiply effect on our investment is that we are using instruments such as securitization or guarantee instruments, so that every time we put $1 on the ground, it has up to 4 to 7 times the effect that fund. So each time we put $1, we are able to attract 4 to 7 times more resources with those instruments that we are able to put together. One of the core elements that we saw on investment in our region is, first of all, the lack of good, strong, well-developed projects. And that's because we see that there is a lot of resources, but the resources that are out there are not adapted to the projects, the development needs that our region has. So what we have done with the West African Development Bank, we put together a project development facility to support project developers to incorporate eligibility criteria of the donors in the project, and we co-develop projects with them. Initially, we used to mobilize resources from GCF, for example, between 18 to 24 months. But right now in our region, we are able to develop projects within 8 to 10 months maximum, because we work together with them to see how we can remove those barriers and make sure that they don't come as a bridge between the countries. One of the biggest risks that also is around there right now is the climate risk, which more and more is taken into consideration in project assessments within the region. And one of the solutions that we have is we are using insurances to make sure that they lower the risk capacity and then enable countries to be able to mobilize more resources. So now when we develop, we take insurances on our portfolio, for example, and when anytime a catastrophe occurs in the country, the insurance company pays back the bank, and then the country uses the resources that were already available to pay the bank to come to support the population and the people. So it lowers the risk level by taking an insurance on our portfolio as well. So those are some instruments that we use to make sure that we lower the insurance, we lower, excuse me, the risk in our country, to make sure that we have a chance to mobilize more resources for our countries. Thank you.
Well, Mubarak, thank you very much for this very impressive presentation of the work of BOAD, and also thank you very much for pointing out that today's world is becoming smaller and smaller, and responses to global challenges, of which climate change is one, require action of beyond borders, beyond individual agendas. I would like to take the opportunity also to mention that this session is about the Regional Green Economy Forum. And Mubarak just mentioned about the need for investment projects, need for bankable projects. So one of the things that the RGF is called to do, and we hope to meet for the next The previous Regional Green Economy Forum took place in Tangier in Morocco in July this year. And the next Regional Green Economy Forum will take place hopefully in Maldives, right? The RGF, as part of the Global Alliance on Green Economy, is called to, among other things, to develop a pipeline of bankable projects. So this is something that the banks like yours are very interested to see on the table, and that's what countries will hopefully deliver. My next question goes to Mr. Peter Otengo. Peter, we would really like to know if what is your opinion and maybe what your organization does in prioritizing the green investment. How do you prioritize, and what challenges have you faced in assessing finance for sustainable development? Both assessing the potential investors, but also accessing broader sources.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this, to invite me to represent AFDAN, which is the Africa Climate Funds, National Designated Authorities and Focal Points. All climate funds in the continent of Africa. GCF, the greatest, Adaptation Fund, Loss and Damage, JEF, all those funds save. Why is this network? This network is because Africa has been operating in an isolated way where the landscape approach in mobilization of climate finance, deployment, ease of access, development of bankable project proposals for which the resources are being mobilized has been scattered, has not been coherent, has left very many behind. It is upon this background that AFDAN came into being from Alexandria to Samal Sheikh to Namibia to bring in the continent as a unified continent which mobilizes climate finance, deploy it, and ensure that no one is left behind and no one is pulling anybody behind in Africa, because Africa has been stuck on what we call the jig of less than 4%. Every time you go into a forum, Africa has only attracted less than 4%. When you hear 300 billion, 1.2, Africa has 0%. It is on this that we are coming in here. But now let me dig deeper now to the regional forum. One, the regional forums is very critical to bringing in how the private sector, the development partner and the funders can now come together to mobilize resources to invest in green economy. I am coming with the perspective of Kenya because in Kenya by 2009, Kenya was the first ever to talk about green investment. When we were told that green investment was risky, investments were not viable, solar then was seen as a miniature, but we went on, did it, and demonstrated that solar investment in renewable energy is good for that. So I am very grateful that World Economic Forum Organization, from Tangier to Saudi Arabia, and now next year we are moving into Kenya, the Kenya Africa Green Investment Forum on April 13 and 18. I don't know whether it will be faster than Maldives or Maldives will be ahead of us, but the next quantum of all the global green investment, the African Davos is happening in Kenya, in Nairobi, and the target to mobilize for the advancements of green economy is $10 billion. We have done it with the DCF. We are very confident because we have bankable projects proposal. How have we got it? One, is the principle of no one should be left behind. I'm very happy to be joined by the team from the BCRUP, Urban Poor, and local authorities here. And also the Development Bank of West Africa. All the banks must now come to put what they have on the table. It is not about adaptation is risky. We have demonstrated it is not risky. It is bankable. It is bankable. And every dollar you put, an investor put in adaptation, saves and gives you 10. If you don't invest in resilient infrastructure, you are investing to die. So one, in the Kenyan Regional Economic Forum, which is organized by AFDAN, the government of Kenya, UCLG, and all the team, we will demonstrate how we are de-risking this without following the banking system. How are we doing that? In Kenya, for example, where we have our financing locally led climate action, the government and our development partners put in more than 300 million US dollars for that program. Within the program itself, we have 2,248 projects. To those projects, we have selected 100 viable projects. It is these 100 viable projects that we will now deliver to the private sector. Get it done. And from there now we are coming up with Green Investment Bank. The Green Investment Bank will be a de-risking facility to show the private sector, bank there, if it fails, we will give you this money. Because we are confident we have done. But finally, AFDAN is here to identify workable solutions from Morocco, Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, put them in a platform, get the money, and help the countries develop their bankable project proposal. By 2035, all African countries will be in a landscape that we are investing as well. And that is why anybody, if your country has not been part of AFDAN, then your grandmother must deal with you very quickly and squarely because no one should be left behind. And that's why World Economic Forum Organization must be in Kenya, must join AFDAN, and must deliver this. We will be in the Maldives. I'd like to be there to see how we are working there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. And thank you very much for presenting the important work that AFDAN is supporting in the region. I believe and I hope everybody would agree that having a platform like AFDAN that coordinates and harmonizes the work of different funding operators is adding value to the region. And also you understand that you serve as an interlocutor with the private sector for these funding operators. Thank you very much. Before we go into the open discussion, I have a very important question to ask from our distinguished representative from USLG Africa, Mr. Nbu. We would really love to know your opinion as one of the major players in Africa, as the organization that supports the cooperation between the governments at the city level. If you can tell us from your perspective, from your experience, what regional partnerships or international collaborations have accelerated the flow of green finance maybe already, or can potentially accelerate the flow of green finance, and what lessons can other regions learn from the experience of Africa?
Thank you very much for invite me. As a representative of the United Cities and local government, I want to recall the context first. I think that right now we enter the new cycle of the implementation of Paris Agreement. And this new cycle is oriented to implement the stocktake process. And this stocktake call for more partnership, but also call for more involvement of local authorities and also the private sector. And in this regard, I think that USLG Africa has a long experience on partnership because this is the heart of the implementation process. And for that, we start to partnership with the government first because we have to connect the dots. It doesn't make sense that the government work in one way and the local government in other way. And I think that the partnership with the government is the key, and to put in place one structured dialogue to territorialize the indices. And you know, right now we are talking about indices 3.0. 3.0 is oriented action. And this is why I think that the local government right now is at the heart of the process, of the implementation process. Saying that, I think also that Peter said about the finance. We have a very strong partnership with AFDAN also, because without a financial process, I think that we still stay in the same place. And we have a very good relationship with AFDAN to implement some flagship initiative like BCRUP, Building Climate Resilience in the ground. And I want to say thank you for Peter because he played a very strong role, you know, to to moving forward regarding this partnership. Also, we have a very strong partnership with the Green Climate Fund regarding the readiness process, because we put in place 3 readiness that we have, one in Morocco, and also BCRUP, leading by Peter Odango, and also we have regional readiness for the West Africa. I think this partnership lead to move forward. And we are right now waiting for Altera Fund, because it is very important, and also Lose and Damage Fund. I think this is the way that we can go forward regarding partnership in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mbu. I think the work that your organization does is going to serve a very good role model for not only for institutions in Africa, and especially given the urbanization taking place, being on track in Africa, but also everywhere else in the world. The work of organizations like yours is going to be more and more important. And as we mentioned, the next Regional Green Economy Forum is going to take place in another region, and it will go on. And maybe one day it will come back again to Africa, as Peter mentioned. Experiences of the organizations like BOAD, like AFDAN, like UCLG Africa, need to be shared with the countries, need to be shared through South-South cooperation, through South-South knowledge exchange. And we're looking forward to the next Regional Economic Forum. Now, I would like to invite the audience, in case there are any questions from the audience to our distinguished participants. This is the right time for you to address this is the source of information, at the first source. Okay, if we don't have any questions. All right, we have a question.
No, because there is when as a financial institution, one of the things I face when I discuss with a project developer, we develop the project, we design and all, the next challenge that I have is the institutional arrangement and the framework. I understand local communities are the core elements for implementation on the ground. But in many of our countries, well, I'm talking for African countries. For many of our countries, local governments and local communities are not able to mobilize resources without having an alignment, like you said, with the central government. And in many of our countries, as you may know, some regions are not necessarily, I would say it bluntly, are not necessarily in the party in powers aligned with them. And sometimes, just because of that, that region is not able to mobilize resources. How do you go around that in terms of resource mobilization when an elected person is not from the government, the central government's party? How do you go beyond that?
Oh, great. In Kenya, we have done it. Because over the last 10 years, we have been faced by that challenge. But when we had a challenge, we had to get around it. It is on that background that we designed financing locally led climate action, FLOC. FLOC is designed in such a way that we mobilize capital, climate finance from the global system. That capital comes into the country in the National Treasury or Ministry of Finance. Within that Ministry of Finance, the money is dedicated in a dedicated account. But that money is not used by the government system. It is taken to the subnational, which we call counties. In the subnational, because we know them, they are being managed by politicians. They are not bad people anyway, but they're very angry guys. So in that money is also put in a dedicated account. They held that money in trust. But the implementation and the implementation comes from the world level. Now, the world level are the ones which are designed to prioritize under what we call participatory climate risk assessment. First of all, you go to the village. Then the village comes as a ward. Then they sit together as the local people themselves because they are given the power to prioritize 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth are adaptation, agriculture, water, climate risk assessment, climate information, and then there is the third component of emerging issues. Once they have prioritized that, then that list is now submitted to the subnational government. The subnational government with the technical people are not supposed to change anything. They are now supposed to package those ones. When they package that PIU of this program, I am not supposed to change what my grandmother has prioritized. Then there is a two-way of this, how this fund is working. There is what is called IPF component. IPF component is supporting all the national government for policy strengthening and capacity. It's about 10% of the total portfolio. 10% capped there. Policies, capacity building, 10%. 90% is now divided into two. One is institutional climate, county climate change institutional support. This support is not TA. The TA is a one man, a one woman walking around with a briefcase. This is to build the capacity of the institution which you established at that local level. It is 100,000 per year for 3 years, $3,000, and it is automatic. Then the bigger money now, it is investment. Now investment, which is now going to on the prioritized, is 1.25 million US dollars per year until you die. Now that money is for the people. It is the oldest people who are. So we have got it.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think what you just mentioned, it reiterates the fact that the work of the organizations like yours is going to be welcomed by the funding operators globally, because you know better what people need on site. You know better what organizations like BOAD need. Mohammed, please.
Yes, I want to just to highlight, that the process of the decentralization in Africa is very weak. There are many countries that this process don't lead local government to be part of the process. And I think that the partnership that we have with WGO, and also to focus on some project like neutral carbon by choosing 11 cities, I think that it will demonstrate also how to overcome this process about decentralization, because we put action at the front of the process. And I think that this partnership with USAID Africa and WGO will help also to go forward regarding the implication of local government in the process. And
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Thank you for mentioning WGO. As many of our participants know, World Green Economy is the global platform for different stakeholders to come together and to find solutions to common problems. But also, what you suggested about the Gauge and the Regional Green Economy Forum, having bankable projects, having specifics. It's not about just having the title. It's about developing the process so that it comes on the table to organizations like BOAD ready to implement. So I just want to take the opportunity to encourage everybody to follow the upcoming Regional Green Economy Forum and to prepare for more practical action. Before we ask Mr. Jerome Usher, the Senior Director, to close up, I just have one quick question to our distinguished participant, Amjad Abdullah. You are uniquely positioned because you have participated and sometimes even led the negotiations on behalf of your government. At the same time, you know what happens in the field, you know what happens in the countries. So from your opinion, what are the key barriers for scaling up green finance in your region, but also what are the barriers potentially for scaling up green finance in other regions of the world? And how can stakeholders, governments, private...
Thanks, Adam. I think it's a very pertinent question. I've been on both sides as a government representative, also on this side. I do recognize, I think it's not a complaint. I think what the countries have always been contemplating is the access to adequate predictable finance. The access has been enormously bureaucratic. It has not been matched to the needs. So the question is, what we could do is that, that's where World Green Economy comes, is to help the countries, because countries are already in debt. as it relates to mostly on adaptation. That's a resilience. If you look at the water security, the food security, even the energy security. So what can you do? Because if you are already in that, because even the countries are finding extremely difficult on top of these debts to even provide their own equity. So I mean, there's no way that the government can even go to private sector, let alone that the countries I know from the global south has always called for grant-based finance. But this is where the comparative advantage of world green economy is coming and helping to provide the equity so that you can partner with the world green economy, and then world green economy is there to help to facilitate, because there are a number of examples that I can share, but this is how world green economy acts. We are a mediator, we provide equity so that the countries don't have to bear that burden, so that, of course, it has to be a business model. Because in the current state of the geopolitics, you obviously understand that, it has to be the sustainability context anchored into your recurrent government planning and budgetary purposes. Otherwise, I think it's going to be extremely difficult, unsustainable, if the way that, I have to say that even the countries have to think otherwise. How do you get the business model? We recognize and understand it's not a profit making, but has to be a somewhat business model, sustainable way. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Amjad. And you had a quick comment. Yes, Mohammed, please.
No, I think that this response, the last report of the World Bank is very clear. I think in Africa, the enable environment of investment need to be strengthening. And also the regulation, because if you want to mobilize private capital in climate, and because the private sector is the key also, don't forget that. Because if we want to go forward, I think that the private sector and local government must be there. As the president of Kenya said, talking is over. Right now we are in the implementation process. And if we want the implementation process, we have to develop the enable environment, to catch the capital and to move forward regarding climate.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Can we consider your input as a call to all the stakeholders, governments, municipal governments, private sector, civil society, to come together, have a dialogue, and come up with practical solutions, and follow the upcoming Regional Green Economy Forum 2026, and come together to discuss it further. This discussion will continue. Follow us on WGO website. For now, I would like to invite the Senior Director of the World Green Economy Organization, Jerome Moucher, for quick closing remarks.
Well, thank you, Adam, for moderating this session. Thank you to all the panelists. As we conclude this important session, allow me to express my sincere gratitude. Our time together has reaffirmed a collective truth. The global transition to a green economy will only succeed if we close the gap between commitment and capital, between ambition and implementation. COP30 gives us a renewed mandate for climate ambition, and REGF 2026 will give us a platform to translate that ambition into bankable, scalable solutions that deliver real outcomes on the ground. WGO stands ready and committed to bridge the divide between climate goals and economic transformation as an intergovernmental organization connecting countries around the world. Thanks today marks the beginning of a process. What follows must be delivery of finance, delivery of projects, delivery of impact for communities. As we move towards REGF 2026, I encourage you to stay engaged, join us as a partner, donor, or co-host, and help us shape a forum that will accelerate the green economy transition across all regions. Together, we can ensure that the promises made are kept and that our economy grows stronger, more resilient, and more sustainable
you and
for
Leah.
generations
And
to
we
come.
heard you perfectly,
Allow me
so good news
to
also
thank
on
you
that
once
front.
again for your leadership and
Um,
collaboration, and we look forward to continuing this journey with all of you. Thank you.